Podcast Network Asia.
Welcome to She Talks Peace, a podcast that highlights the role of women peacebuilders around the world in bringing lasting peace and security to communities. Eavesdrop on their communities and get to know their stories. From the Philippines to Malaysia, from Indonesia to Palestine, from Myanmar to the United States. Their dreams and hopes for a world without violence and a world where every woman and girl can be whoever she wants to be. Hosted by Amina Rasul Bernardo, President of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy. This is She Talks Peace.
Hello everyone! Salam! Welcome to another episode of She Talks Peace. I'm Amina Rasul of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, joining you from Manila. And here's my co-host.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Ayesa Abubakar, and I'm a lecturer here at University Malaysia Sabah, based in Kota Kinabalu, Sabah, Malaysia. So I'm so excited for our episode today, Amina.
Yeah, so am I, Ayesa. By the way, I like your shirt. It's got this beautiful floral pattern, similar to mine. Hey, you know what? This shirt, I got
It's
this.
Indonesian. It's Indonesian batik.
Well, this is Palestinian. I have this network, this Women's Alliance for Security Leadership, and every time we meet, my friend who has been on She Talks Peace, Lucy, she always brings things that are made by the women in Palestine, and they have this beautiful embroidery. So I always make sure that I get something from Lucy, and I'm really hoping that Lucy is safe, because the news coming from that part of the world is not that great. And yes, I always worry every time I hear the news about what's happening in Ukraine, in Palestine, in Afghanistan. Oh my God! And I worry about what's happening with the kids. Yes, you remember our previous episode with Ging Deles, our former peace advisor in the Philippines?
Yes.
And Ging was talking so much about how do you make a world safe and peaceful for her grandson, right? Her grandson Biggs, so that he can have a full life, he can dream, he can be a child. And I keep worrying, I guess, about what's
and for
going on.
the younger generation to embrace being a global citizen, not just be contained in the states where we belong or citizenship where we belong to, but really embrace the whole of humanity wherever they are. We should be looking at each other in the same way.
Yeah.
Rich
But
and
yes,
poor.
I remember that you were involved with a program that was doing humanitarian work with the illegal aliens, right? In Sabah, right?
Okay.
In Sabah, the Halaw. And you
we
were
are not
working
illegal aliens.
you were working with the children. They're undocumented, but so they're not registered. They can't go to school. They're not accessible to the health system. What's happening with those kids in?
It's part of
Sabah?
my research work. It's part of my research work as a researcher and an academic here at the university. So for the past 3 years, we've been doing research on undocumented persons in Sabah. We have completed that research, and hopefully it will be published somehow. And then another ongoing research that we have yet to complete, but we've finished already the field work, is about the children in street situations. Okay, in a more popular way, they are called street children in the Philippines. But now, to be politically correct, the United Nations actually use this term, children in street situations. So, one of the findings that we get actually from this research on children in street situations And this is not something new. In fact, many scholars from other places like America have also done this. Is that it's really about the mindsetting, of who are from the point of view of the researchers and from the point of view of state, the government. We look at them as that these children that we found in the streets, they are hopeless. They have no future. What we should be
But,
doing is
but
take them out of the streets and put them
yeah, but
in the schools or institutions.
tell
But
me,
then
tell me
our
a little bit about that, yes, about the actual situation. Is
yeah,
it getting any better in Sabah, or do you
yeah.
still see that these children are subjected to discrimination and abuse, and the government is really ill-equipped to take care of the problem? What's happening to the children in Sabah? Yes.
Yeah. To continue, Amina, we have to understand that children who are found in the streets, they are not necessarily not doing anything. In fact, here in Kota Kinabalu, the children that you can find in the streets, yes, a few of them would be beggars, but a very small number. Many of them are actually selling, different things, whether they are selling plastic bags, they're selling food. The street is where they form their life. Okay, so our finding is that many of these children are in the streets because that is where they do their socio-economic activities. The not so good news about it is that, of course, they do not have that access to education. But as far as the other issues are concerned, like abuse among these children, we have not really come across to that kind of situation among the children that we have interviewed. So fortunately for a small number of these children, yes, the government organization that we are working with, the Department of Social Welfare, they are very interested on how to help these children, mainly through education. So we'll see what will happen through this from this research, because we are also closely working with the government.
Well, that's I guess that's good to hear that you don't have rampant cases of child abuse, at least in Sabah, and not
So far, I
high
have not
level.
really come across to that. Yeah.
Yeah, so violence against children, trafficking of children, cyber
Mm-hmm.
bullying, etc. That's good. That's good news. Unlike, of course, in the Philippines, as you are well aware, that a law was even passed, no, in 1992, and this was Republic Act 7610, providing for stronger deterrence and special protection against child abuse, exploitation, discrimination. And it covers all manners of abuse, whether it's sexual or trafficking or bullying. It's covered there. But the thing is, in spite of laws, people
Mm-hmm.
always find a way to
Yes,
market
that's right.
children or abuse
Mm-hmm.
children. And really, Ayesa, as a mother, the abuse of children is unimaginable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And yet,
Yeah.
it happens. It takes various forms, whether it's cultural or if the parents are poor, economic reasons. I really don't know. When it comes to the protection of our children, who is always right, that we always talk about them about as the hope for the future. Laws and safety nets are weak or non-existent. That's why I'm so glad that, for instance, in the Philippines we have strong NGOs and advocates who are really picking up the cudgels for protection of our children. And I'm so glad that we have as our guest today somebody who can tell us a lot about how do we protect our children. Maybe you want to introduce her, Ayesa, one doctor to another.
Yeah, we are really privileged for this consecutive episodes, because we have been able to invite award winners from the Ramon Magsaysay Award. So our guest today, her name is Dr. Bernadette Madrid. She is also one of the awardees of the 2022 Ramon Magsaysay Awards for her work in leadership in establishing multi-sectoral effort that addresses, that promotes child protection, and that can be a model throughout Asia. So through Dr. Bernadette's work, she has been very active, not only in the civil society organization, but she has also well established a very concrete program at the Philippine General Hospital, where she is the head of the Philippine General Hospital Child Protection Unit. It's a very specialized unit protecting children who may possibly be victims of child abuse. So she has been in that post since 1997. So PGH, it seems that a lot of recognition has been given to the work of Dr. Bernadette, because now everybody's saying that this is perhaps one of the best medical system, for protection of abused children in Southeast Asia. So without waiting any further, I'm sure Dr. Bernie will share with us a lot of stories about her experiences working with children and parents, in this dimension of protection, child protection in the Philippines. Dr. Bernie, welcome to She Talks Peace.
Yes, thank you for that very generous introduction, Dr. Ayesa. And hello, Amina. I'm
Hi,
very
Dr.
happy.
Bernie.
Yes, I'm very happy to participate in your podcast, She Talks Peace. I think that we need peace around the world. I was listening very intently to your conversation with Ayesa. And the history of the Philippine General Hospital Child Protection Unit is very much connected with children in streets situation.
Oh,
Bec
really?
Yes, because our main funder actually is City Bridge Foundation,
Uh-huh.
which is chaired by David Bradley. He came to love the Philippines in the 1970s, and he promised himself that he will do something for the children of the Philippines. He owned a research company in the early 90s, and he was helping NGOs who were dealing with children in street situation. So because he had the research company, they did the research on why are these children in the streets. And
Uh-huh.
one of the major findings of this research is that they are in the street because they are being abused at home. That was the
Ah,
reason
okay.
why they are in the street. And there are, at that time in the early 90s, there were so few services for children who have been abused. That is why he worked with the Philippine General Hospital to establish the Child Protection Unit for abused children and their families. So we have grown since then. And one of our findings also is that in areas where
Okay.
there are no
Yeah.
reports of
That's
abuse, where there are
interesting.
no
Yeah.
reports, no, it's not because there's no abuse. It's just that there are no services for them. So the
Uh-huh.
children do not come out and disclose
Okay.
because they're afraid. So WHO even has this prevention readiness staging of different communities, starting with stage zero, where
Mhm.
there it seems as if there's no abuse,
Yeah.
but actually there is.
There is
Uh,
hidden. It's
yeah,
really
it's
hidden.
hidden. Yes, it's hidden. And it goes up the stages as more awareness happens in the community, and
Yeah.
as they're more prepared to establish prevention programs. Yes.
By the way, Doc
Ha-
Bernie, in your website, you stated that your goal is to have at least one child protection unit or women and children protection unit in every province in the Philippines, and you say you're very near that goal. How near, Doc Bernie? Because you made mention that you're kind of lacking in Mindanao. Is that right?
Actually, Mindanao and Luzon is even more lacking than Mindanao. There are right now 123 43 women and children protection units in 61 provinces and 10 independent cities. And there are more provinces in Luzon without a women and children protection unit than in Mindanao, although it's almost neck and neck. Visayas, it's only Biliran. It's only the
Only
province,
Biliran.
yeah, only Biliran that does not have women and children protection unit.
Bernie,
So, yeah,
how come the government isn't doing much more to
uh,
protect the children? I mean, are you relying on partnership with the health system, for instance, to put up these units to take care of children who are
yeah,
abused, or are you left
yeah.
on your own, basically?
No, when we started, we did partner with the Department of Health. But as you know, health has devolved in the Philippines, and there are more hospitals that are supported by the local government unit than by the Department of Health. So as time went on, we had to work with the local government units. So it's province by province. No? So even though the Department of Health has an order stating that all government hospitals should have a women and children protection unit, the provinces still need support for them to be able to establish it. And that's what we're doing. So there now we have a new province, which is that Maguindanao is now northern and southern Maguindanao. So we have 82 provinces now instead of just 81. So we are still lacking now 21, 21 provinces without a women and children protection unit.
But really, Bernie, it seems like a drop in the bucket, right? Because today, the kind of abuse that we're seeing is now in the cyberspace.
Oh yes, oh
So
yes.
how do we manage uh, with the resources that we have? How do you really go about protecting the children, or is the best thing that we can do really to take care of the traumatized children?
The best thing is still primary prevention, to stop abuse from happening in the first place. And good news for us is that there are really now evidence-based programs that show that it can prevent abuse from happening in the first place. And there's even an acronym for it. It's called INSPIRE. It's an acronym. It's letters standing for the program that it represents. If people would just Google Inspire, World Health Organization, although many organizations really collaborated to come up with that manual. Uh, there are examples there of programs like, for example, parenting. We really need good parenting programs. I mean, sure, there are parenting programs already existing, but not all parenting programs are effective. So there are certain elements that have to be present. That's why we need evidence-based programs to say that this parenting program will probably work. And in the Philippines, we do have that. We have the Masayang Filipino
Okay.
Family Program with evidence, no, with the randomized controlled study showing that it can prevent physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect in poor families. No, so this was done with the four P's families. So there are programs that we all we need to do is to adapt and implement them for us to prevent abuse from happening. Scale them up, no, not limit them to pilot here and there.
So, Doc Bernie, in spite of everything that we're doing, why does child abuse persist and seems to be growing?
Because
And what will be done to really put a halt to the spread?
it just means we're not doing enough.
Ah,
Okay, we're not doing enough. Because as I was starting to say that you need to reach enough children to make an impact.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just concentrate on a few children, a little program here, just a pilot, it's not going to make that big of an impact.
Yeah.
Sure, it might make a difference, of course, in the lives of those few children. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
it may, but it's not enough for the whole country. What we need are really enough evidence programs at scale,
Mm-hmm.
at scale to be able to really reach enough number so that we will make that impact. And I believe we can do that. It is possible.
Mm-mm.
Whereas before, when we started, it was like, you just have to deal with the consequences. Now we know that we don't have to wait for abuse to happen. We can prevent. And as I said, one of that is parenting programs, but it has to be the evidence-based parenting
Right.
program, not just any parenting program. Because if you're just doing a little lecture and then you call that a
Mm-mm.
parenting program, that's not a,
Yeah.
that's not a
That's not.
parenting
That's
program.
not it.
Oh yeah, and we know, for example, we have a safe schools program of
Mhm.
really the curriculum of the children. You
Uh
put
huh.
in socio emotional learning. You're talking about peace. You start with the children, not with the adults. And when we
Okay.
talk about socio emotional learning, that includes in there how do you handle anger, you know
Oh,
how
that's
do
very important.
how do you cope with emotions, recognize
Mm.
your emotions and cope with them? How do you make
But
better
Dr.
decisions?
Bernie, what is the reaction of the parents, especially
No,
during the
yeah.
parenting program?
Oh, they love it. They love the parenting
Okay.
program. Always part of the evaluation is the reaction of the parents, and we've done the study, a randomized controlled trial, including parents' opinions, what they felt about the program, and they're very happy with the program. It's not a preachy program wherein you are lecturing to parents. It's helping parents solve problems. It's the process, what it is that they can do, and they discuss it with each other. So the strategy on how this program is implemented is just as important as the content, because parents don't want just to be told, just like children don't want to be authoritatively told to do something,
Mm.
neither do parents. Yeah.
Don't let my children
Doc-
hear you say that.
Dr. Dr. Bernie, I'm sure you have had experiences dealing with parents who have been involved in child abuse.
Of
So
course, yes.
what what drives them to commit such abuses on their children? Can
Well,
can you
yeah,
explain this to us? What happens?
many of them have experienced abuse themselves. You
Okay.
see, it has already been shown by so many researchers that abuse has an intergenerational component. That if you won't put a stop to it, it goes on to the next generation. For parents who physically abuse their children, many of them, even majority of them, have also been physically abused
Yeah,
when they were
that
children,
is true.
and
That's
that's how they know how to discipline children. Oh, they have to be
Okay.
given alternative ways of doing it.
yeah.
For sexual abuse, of course, there's no excuse. Okay,
Yes.
there is no excuse, but you know that there are also many things going on in their lives. It doesn't excuse their behavior, but we're still trying to understand why a father would sexually abuse his own daughter. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's not always because they themselves have been abused
Yeah.
sexually, but they could have been abused some other way, emotionally, neglected also, physically, and the result is that they sexually abuse the child.
Right.
So the different forms of abuse will have other consequences, not exactly the same form as they have
Okay.
experienced it. And
it's in exhibiting that you have the power
yes,
over the powerless, and it makes you feel more important, I guess.
right. And also how you look at the child, that the child is your property,
Yeah, that
that
is
you
true.
could do anything to them, and that they owe it to you because you gave birth to them and you are feeding them, so that they owe everything to you. So all of that are
Yeah.
factors.
But Bernie, sometimes I think about the influence of generational differences on child abuse. Like when I was growing up, being spanked by your parents was not abuse. It was discipline. In fact, in school, if you did something bad, especially if you studied in an all girls school run by nuns, they make you load sa gravel, or they'll get a ruler and they'll hit your hand. You experience that also, Ayesa, right? That kind of physical discipline.
During my
Today,
time, I just have to stand up in front of the class,
standing in the
but
corner.
not being, yeah, stand in
But
a corner.
today, it's completely different now. You can't ever do that. So,
Because the
parents get into
research.
different tricks, right? Like, Bernie, I don't know if you ever did this with, with kids. Like, you count, stop doing that. I'll count to five. One, two. And then when you get closer to five and they're still making a mess, four and a half, four and one thirds. So the different types of disciplining, but
Yeah, yes, but you
what is
see,
abuse has changed, right? The concept of what is abuse has changed too.
it changed, but the science has not changed.
Ah,
What the
okay.
science has shown is that what was done before had bad effects on the children. What was not recognized was the bad effects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's not
that's
that
right.
the thoughts now just change. It's just a thought or a
Mm-hmm.
behavior, but it's because the science itself has shown that it was
Mm.
bad. People always say, "Well, look at me," you know. I experience, all of this, what you now call physical abuse, and look at me, I'm now successful because of it. Ah, but we have not unpacked all of that. What you mean by look at me and I'm okay now? How do we know how okay is
Uh-oh.
okay?
So I can
Yeah.
tell my mom you should never have spanked me with your chinelas. Oh, dear listeners, that's slipper for for
Um,
all of you who are not Filipino.
I mean,
yeah, but
our generation, if we are in Europe, we have been in prison already a long time ago. That's the
but
truth.
but but, usually, but
That's,
usually, when we in the women and children protection units, we of course assess the whole thing. It's not
Mm-hmm.
always about you put someone in prison. No,
Mm-hmm.
well, if you put all the parents in prison, what will happen? That's not good either.
That's
It's
true.
helping families be nurturing to their children on what is the best way to do that.
just
So of
saying
course,
that
if
Dr.
they kill their child, that's different.
Uh,
Uh-huh.
I'm just saying that Dr. Bernie, because years ago, there was actually an interesting case of a Malaysian diplomat family. They were, hitting their child with hanger, and they were somewhere
What?
in, I forgot which country in Europe, and it
Wow.
was a big case, in fact. So they went to prison. The parents went to prison, and then they were tried
Yeah,
in court. So yeah, it did happen. So if
yeah,
you are
that's
in these countries that,
because that's too much. Like recently, last night in the news,
Mm.
an overseas Filipino mother crying because her son was killed uh, by his sister and the live-in partner or paternal partner, whatever because they were the ones taking care of her children while she is abroad, and
Oh.
they beat him to death. Why did
Oh
they
my
beat him
goodness.
to death? Because he ate all the food. He
Wow.
was hungry. He ate all the food. You see that is the slippery slope. you know.
Yeah.
You right now it's just a little spank here, a little spank there. You get angry, it becomes more, and then
Yeah.
now it becomes more and more, and then
It's more
suddenly you
and more.
cannot control yourself, and there you have an 8-year-old who's dead, you know.
You know what, Doc Bernie, when you're talking about the problem, for instance, when parents become overseas workers, I remember a conversation that my mom, when she was in the Senate, Senator Nina Rasul, she had a conversation with the late President Corazon C. Aquino, and they were
Mm.
talking about the problem with the overseas workers. And my mother's point was, if we continue this process of sending our women, the mothers, abroad as migrant workers, you are going to have so much dysfunction within families. And we are going to pay for that later. But at the end of the day, both President Aquino and my mother said, but there is nothing that we can do because we don't have much to offer them to stay, and you certainly cannot stop them from leaving. That is their right to leave if they want to. And now, I guess those were prophetic words, because now we are reaping the dysfunction from having all of these parents who are abroad and relying on somebody else to parent the children. But that's just something, I guess, that not much can be done unless government steps in a little bit more and supports the protection of children, providing parenting workshops, as you mentioned, through Pamana. By the way, the four-piece program that's being run by the Department of Social Welfare and Development, is that scaling up when it comes to the protection of children and the teaching of parenting lessons?
Yeah, I really believe in the four P's, on what the four P's can do. You know, I think first let's go to the four P's, then I'll go to the parenting. Now, for the four P's, people mistakenly think that it is an anti-poverty program. You know that
It's not.
that
Yeah,
its goal is that to make them, economically better. That is not
right.
the goal. The
Yeah,
goal of the four Ps is that it's actually for the children, so that the children goes to school, they have access to healthcare, they at least have something to eat, so the goal is about the child, who should not be so affected by that poverty.
mm-hmm.
And there's so many evaluations by the World Bank on that four piece shows
Mm-hmm.
how the good that it does. Okay.
Yeah,
Now the parenting program, the four piece program in the Philippines has the family development seminars.
right.
And Masayang Pamilya program has worked with the four Ps, so that the Masayang Pamilya evidence-based parenting program is incorporated into the family development seminars.
Oh, that's
So
excellent.
yes,
That's
so it
excellent.
has now reached 4 million families.
Oh,
The
wow,
four,
that is
yeah,
great.
yeah,
And Bernie, that's
yes,
poorest of the poor, right?
yes,
The
yes.
most vulnerable.
Right.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I really believe in that four P's, no? And instead of scaling it down, it should be scaled up, because that's really helping these poor children while you do your anti-poverty program. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not the anti-poverty program. This is helping the children while you're doing your anti-poverty program, so that they will be taken out of that four P's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, dear listeners, this is one of the government programs that the Philippines should rightfully be proud of, because although we borrowed it from Latin America, right, Bernie?
Mhm.
We
Yeah,
borrowed it from Latin America.
Bolsonaro.
Yeah. And what it does is that government gives an allowance to every family through the mother, right, Bernie? Not through the
Yes, yes.
father, but through the mother. And you get this monthly allowance only if your children are healthy and they stay in school. So Bernie is right. Dr. Bernie is right. It's not a poverty program. It's really a program geared towards making children healthy and educated. And I'm really hoping, Bernie, that they can expand the family development seminar to incorporate more of these parenting skills that families sorely need. Yes, you're
Yes.
also familiar with the four-piece program, right? Because it
Yes,
was
yes.
working very well in Maguindanao.
I think by extension, it's not only on the children that it wants to support, but also to the mothers. I understand that through the four Ps, they also do all these reproductive health assistance. The mothers and the children. So by extension, it's really the mother and the children that are being helped by the four Ps.
Yeah.
So I
And
think
I
we should
was
be
meaning,
exporting that four Ps idea.
yeah. Dr. Bernie, I was meaning to ask a little bit more about the work that your network of women and child protection units do. You now have this in many provinces in Luzon and Mindanao, and one in the Visayas,
No, no,
Biliran.
only one does not have Diliran.
Oh,
The
only
rest do.
Biliran does not have. Oh, that's
Oh.
Yes,
fantastic. That is
yes,
really fantastic. Lucky Visayas. So
yeah.
it's multi-dimensional, right? The services
Yes,
that
it's
you offer.
multidisciplinary. Yeah, there are doctors. There are different levels
Uh huh.
depending on resources because we know not all provinces have the same resource. So level one, you have a doctor and social worker working together. Level two, you add to the doctor and social worker a police officer and or a mental health service provider. And level three is a training center. So we don't need so many training centers, but we
Mm-hmm.
definitely need at least level two. And the resource that is the least available is mental health services.
Ah, okay.
Only 30% of the WCPUs have a mental health provider because there's so few psychologists and psychiatrists in the Philippines. Very few. Like there are only, I think, 1,700 psychiatrists. In the last statistics last week of the Department of Health, they say that the proper proportion is one mental health provider to 10,000 population. In the
Good luck
Philippines,
with that.
the Philippines is 1 is to 100,000 population.
So that means we should
So,
be promoting mental health professionals. I mean, the
mhm,
idea of our young people, taking up becoming mental health professionals.
yes, but at the same time, also we should also learn other non-mental health professionals on how to provide some form of mental, at least wellness programs
Yeah.
to help prevent mental health problems.
Yeah.
Right now with COVID, one of our surveys in one city showed that 70 to 80% of the children have experienced mental distress in the past
Yeah.
30 days. So mental health problems is really so common now. And I'm
Yeah.
sure it's
I've
not
been,
only in the Philippines. I am sure in all countries of the world they're experiencing the same.
yeah. I've been following the news, for instance, in
Doctor,
the United States with all of these mass murders happening, shootings in clubs, and I cannot help but wonder whether those years of being cooped up with no outlets have
Mm,
really pushed people over the edge to act on their criminal fantasies, right? To actually go out and kill five people who were doing nothing except enjoying a show, a show in a club. I agree with
Dr.
the yes. I mean,
Bernadette,
how do you do
I
that
wanted
here in the Philippines?
I wanted to ask Dr. Bernadette, so if we are to promote that every local government organization, local government unit rather in Philippines, do this child protection unit who will be the best champions?
Ayesa, can you repeat the question? Kasi nag-freeze ka.
Okay. Okay. So if we are to identify who will be the best champions in promoting child protection at all government units, who would be the best champions for this kind of program?
We find that
There is a push.
yes, of course, no, the local executive uh, to persuade. It should be the person who can persuade the local executive to to really push for this. No, in fact, when we do go to the local executives, no one really refuses. No, but when it comes to the implementation, and you're talking about budgets, uh, you need a doctor, you need the social worker, they need the budget. That's where the battle begins. And of course, health seems to be the best place to advocate for this because it's located in hospitals. So, but ordinary citizens, those in the community, mothers, if they can advocate to their local chief executive, and they are voters, so they will be listened to. Yeah.
By the way, going on the lighter side of things, Doc Bernie, when you got the notice from the Ramon Magsaysay Foundation that you had won the award, what was your reaction? Because I know they keep it so secret. You didn't even know you were being interviewed,
Yeah.
right? So that they were researching on you. It's all top secret. So, what was your feeling, Doc Bernie, when you heard that you were an awardee?
Well, I was overwhelmed when the president Susan Afan told me, I cried because it was unbelievable. It was so unexpected, and it was unbelievable. You didn't even know that anyone noticed. So of course I was happy, but at the same time, you ask yourself, there are other people certainly who also deserve it. Um, and I just came to the conclusion that probably God wants me to receive this award so that more people will know about the children who have been abused and for them to do something. So in that sense, I am just a spokesperson, being invited to your podcast, for example, to talk about what is needed and that what the children what is the best way to have what kinds of programs these children need, because no matter what we do, when I examine all our other big problems in the country, like the economy, etc., the root cause still is that it's
Yeah,
about people. And you want, if you want good citizens, who are productive, then they should have grown up and nurtured to become that. And
that's true.
they should, if they become abused, then it becomes harder, and you have to deal with the consequences of that abuse. Even if you look at Putin, look at Putin and his childhood. You know, his, his only support was a dog. I mean, what kind of childhood
Yeah.
was that? He was obviously, at the very least, a neglected child with no one loving him.
Well, he
Yeah.
followed in his father's footsteps. His father, after
Mm.
all, was also KGB. But anyway, but
What is that
Bernie,
saying?
you were
What is that
saying
saying, Amina? What is that saying, Amina? That it takes a village to raise a child. So it's
raise a
not just
child.
about the parents. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
village.
yeah. But I was just saying that Doc Bernie was saying that it's unbelievable that she got the award. I beg to disagree.
Mhm.
Unexpected for you, maybe. Unbelievable, I don't think so. Because yes, I was one of the trustees of the Ramon Magsaysay Awards Foundation, and the one thing that the board always looks for is greatness of spirit, the spark that will trigger change, whether it's in one person, a community, the nation. And let me tell you, Doc Bernie, I have seen big names who've done really great acts passed over because what was lacking was really the spark that is innate in that person. That when another person like me and Ayesa looking at you will trigger responses within us that you could help. So unexpected, yes, Doc Bernie. Unbelievable, no. Yes, I
Well
really do
deserved.
think well
Well
deserved.
deserved
Great,
award.
greatness of spirit
Congratulations.
is in you, and we really congratulate you, Doc Bernie. But before we end, perhaps you have a message to all of our listeners there, the budding great spirits that are that are out there, and what can they do to champion your cause?
Yeah. Among all causes, protecting children is one cause where everybody has a role. It's not just one group. It's not just the multidisciplinary team working in women and children protection units. Each and every individual has a role. All you have to do is to do that role well. Whether you are a teacher, you are a mother, you are a worker in the community, just do your work well with purpose and compassion. And that when it comes to children, uh, listen, no, listen. And if they need help, be there for them. Believe what they have to tell you, and you can do something. So that as I said, any person, you don't even have to be great. You just have to be loving and compassionate, and just have that heart, to nurture a child and help a child, and we can make that difference in the world. That's what I think.
Thank you so much, Doc Bernie. But it might sound simple, but sometimes very difficult to do. But I think
That's right.
it's going
I
to be
agree.
right.
Very
And
difficult.
I think our listeners will start thinking about the message that you have shared with us. So thank you so much, Doc Bernie Madrid, Ramon Magsaysay awardee for 2022. And dear listeners, if you have questions for Dr. Bernie Madrid or comments or ideas for future episodes, do send us an email at shetalkspeacepodcast@gmail.com. Let me repeat that, shetalkspeacepodcast@gmail.com. Wow, Ayesa, this has been a really fun and interesting and very valuable conversation that we've had with Doc
Definitely,
Bernie.
I agree.
Now I have to go
Reminds me
back to
to be a
my
better
children.
mother.
Yeah. But
Reminds all of
my
us.
children are now all grown, but should I ever have a grandchild, then I'll know how to handle disciplinary action after Doc Bernie has told us about the impact of even spanking on children. So thanks so much, Doc Bernie, and dear listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of She Talks Peace. This is Amina Rasul from the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy saying bye for now, and join us again next time. Bye.
And
Thank
from
you.
Kota Kinabalu, Sabah, this is Ayasa. Thank you, Dr. Bernie, and congratulations again.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
She Talks Peace is brought to you in partnership with Podcast Network Asia and Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast. For more information, check out their website at podcastnetwork.asia and podmetrics.co.
The views and opinions expressed by the podcast creators, hosts, and guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy and position of Podcast Network Asia, the hosts of the program, or other programs of the network. Any content provided by the people on the podcast are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.